Good day, everyone. Welcome to the Story Behind the Stories. I'm Ken Waddell, publisher of the Neepawa Banner, Neepawa Press, and I have with me Kate Jackman Atkinson, who is our editor, and our sports reporter, news reporter, Owen Devereaux. We've got a wide range of topics today. And the first one is the successful Neepawa Fair that was held this past weekend, sponsored by the Chamber of Commerce. So, Kate, you have some updates on that, and you've talked to some of the people that were involved. So what's the story behind the story?
So I think probably the biggest story of last week was the Neepawa Fair came to town, and I've had a chance to catch up with Chamber President Jeff Braun, and the organizing committee board are very happy with how it went this year. They've made a couple of changes. They moved their entertainment permanently inside at the Ag Society complex, which I think is a good idea given how variable weather in May can be, and they were really happy with that change. It's also nice to see a number of other groups also getting on board and organizing their own events as part of the fair weekend, and I know that was the idea, was to see other groups kind of latch onto this, and we're seeing that happen. There was a pretty busy craft show up at the Yellowhead, kind of lots of different things going on, lots of yard sales. So overall, Chamber of Commerce is really happy with how this year's fair went.
Owen, you were on the grounds as the rest of us were, but you were there longer and observed a number of things happening there. What did you see going on at the fair?
That's right, Ken. Kate made a very interesting remark right at the end there that the Chamber should be very happy. They should be extremely happy. Saturday afternoon, getting opportunity to walk around and to see all the different events that were going on. What struck me, year over year, the number of people, the number of families that were out, you could tell the difference between last year's festivities and especially the year before. This is really starting to pick up some momentum. The midways were all packed, all the secondary events as well. It was pleasing to see some of the secondary events that were a little away from the midway still had traffic.
Just to jump in there, Saturn shows did tell the Chamber that this was the best year that they'd had. So that's encouraging to see the midway having such success. It's a key part of the fair. So making sure that it's successful will be a key in making sure that it returns.
What I think is going to be very interesting for next year is how do you top it? What can they sort of add to this to make it even bigger and better? I'm very keen on seeing how that plays out.
I know they've said they've started their conversations and started some planning for next year.
I've had some discussion with Scott Dyke, who yesterday, and he's on the board of the Chamber's past president, and he and I had to talk about that. And I related that some of the things that used to happen with the Lily Festival, the parade was a much larger attended event during Lily Festival days than this parade, but there was two or three things that were done differently then. One is that there was about $10,000 spent by the Lily Festival on advertising all across Western Canada. And then there was also, they paid a lot of money for the bands to come, and the bands really add a lot to the parade. There's a number of things that I think that the Chamber will be looking at. It's a matter of number of volunteers and amount of money to hire their staff person for another day or two per week for organizing things. And the Lily Festival had a person 2 days a week all year round, and the Chamber only has a person for 1 day a week. And the festival used to have their person on full-time for June, July, and August. So it was there was a big difference there in terms of the paid input and, of course, the budget that goes with it. But last Thursday, just ahead of the fair, was a big day, and you've got a whole bunch of reports on that too, I think. Owen or Kate, who wants to start?
Well, I can start off, Ken. You're keeping me hopping. You got me running to the fair. You got me running all over the place. But that's just the way to have it. And it just shows how many great things happen in a smaller community such as Neepawa. Thursday, there was the Hope Springs Fashion Show. John Drinkwater was primarily covering it, doing both video and taking pictures as well. And that show will be showing up on NAC TV in the near future. As well, I had an opportunity to head over to the Yellowhead Arena. There, the number 9 cadet squadron were having their final assembly and march of the season. Another interesting thing that was going on as well, French immersion has become such a big thing. There's a lot of schools throughout Manitoba who are focusing on the French language and making it something very important for youngsters. So there was a meeting that was going on at Arts Forward talking about French immersion. I realized that the interesting thing about that meeting, they were talking completely in French. Despite having a last name that sounds French, I can't speak a word of it.
So you're gonna have to go back to school.
Yes, perhaps.
Yeah. And Kate, you saw some of the events too. Do you have some thoughts about those events
yeah.
on Thursday?
I think this speaks a bit to the diversity of what we have going on in the community. I mean, we had, the Yellowhead Hall was packed for the fashion show. They've had this for a number of years, and it's very local. It features fashions from local retailers, and the models are all local people who have undergone cancer treatment. So it's a very generally hopeful event. And it's nice to see that it continues to have such success.
Well, you talk about the Yellowhead being full that night. They had to switch gears up there fairly quickly and be ready for the Saturday event that was there during the fair, and that was the Cat TNR Rescue Craft Show. And I did walk through that and had a look around, and looked like it was very busy as well. So the place was jumping. Oh, and sports. We know you love sports. We all love sports. We all love hockey. If you're Canadian, you gotta love hockey. Yeah. MJHL draft. What's happening? Where are we going with that?
It's the first day of June, so obviously we have to talk hockey.
Well, of course. It feels like hockey outside today.
Sure
hockey,
does.
Hockey season is 365 a year now. Major event coming up for the Manitoba Junior Hockey League this weekend, and for the Neepawa natives, as the annual Bantam Draft is going to be taking place. For people who might be a little unfamiliar, essentially that's players born in the year 2002 for this year. They get an opportunity to be selected by one of the 11 MJHL clubs for a chance to play on the team in the near future. It's a lot like the NHL draft, obviously not the same massive spectacle, but still a very important stepping stone for these young players in terms of going after their dreams.
Well, I know that there's a lot of boys out there with dreams, and I have a grandson who's working his way through the hockey system and is playing junior hockey currently, and always looking for a place to step up higher in the ranks. He's got a couple of years left, so I hear all about hockey around the family dinner table. But locally, a little closer to home, the draft will be held in Winnipeg, but closer to home, you've been following the high school sports at NACI. What have you found there this week? What's going on at the NACI with high school sports right now?
That's right. With the weather getting a little bit nicer, a lot of the outdoor events are going on, such as track and field. The Zone 7 track and field championships were recently held in Neepawa. 8 different schools from all across the region were involved. It was a very good day for NACI. This year they were able to come away with, if I remember correctly, 16 gold medals. That's an improvement of 2 gold medals from last year. Also very interesting is the future of the track team. Most of those medals came from the junior varsity girls and the junior varsity boys. So next couple of years, the track is going to be very exciting here in Neepawa.
Lots of medals there. They're coming home with lots of prizes, and the very high level of participation there.
It is very high level. From now regionals, they're going to be moving on to provincials. Those are going to be happening in the near future. Those usually occur at the University of Manitoba in Winnipeg. So there's going to be several NACI Tigers who are going to be looking to compete and show their best at that event.
It's interesting, I find, over the years when you watch the times and the stats that the students will do a certain level at their own high school and on their own track, and then it seems to step up a notch when they go to the regionals, and then they go to the big show in Winnipeg. They're able to put out take another half a second off their time or whatever, or add another half a foot to their jumps. It's amazing how the competition just brings out the best in these young people as they approach their career on the track. I find it fascinating.
It's nice to see it. Looking at the results, it seems like there's also it's not just one person dominating. It seems like there's some depth to that field, so to speak.
Oh yes, there's a lot of young people on that team that are doing very well. Ben Parrott, a young runner who is very good. He's going to have a great future in the sport if he wants it. Braden Gillies does a lot of long jump and high jump specialty events, but still very good at those. And on the girls' side, I apologize, Zoe, if I mispronounced the last name. Zoe Forgue, very good when it comes to the short track events, things like the 100 or the 200. I mean, these are the types of names. These are the people in our community that you're definitely going to want to look out for in the near future.
And Zoe's had a tremendous career in figure skating too, and I don't know if she's going to carry that on further or not, but all-round athlete there. In fact, all the ones you've named there are multi-sport athletes. It's very, very good to see. So a newspaper isn't a newspaper unless there's columns, in my opinion. And
What?
oh,
Do you wanna
sorry,
talk about
I got
fast
interrupted.
pitch?
Oh, yes, sorry.
There's more high school sports.
I'm
It's
sorry.
not just all about track, Ken.
We're
Oh,
not
okay.
done sportsing just yet, Ken.
Okay, more sportsing.
But I'll keep this really to the point.
No
Just want to
problem.
congratulate the NACI Tigers fast pitch team. They won their wild card game recently. They defeated the Morden Thunder in a wild card play-in game in Portage La Prairie. What that actually means is they get to go on to provincials now. Provincials are going on this weekend in Steinbach, so have to wish them the best of luck. They've been having a fantastic season. They won their zone, and this really puts them in a good place to maybe bring home a provincial title.
There's something that's not on our list though.
What's that?
Owen's going to go this weekend to the Manitoba Baseball Hall of Fame. That's this weekend, right?
Yes, yes.
Who's being inducted there? Lots of familiar faces from Neepawa.
Oh yes, that's going to be coming up on next week's show. We're going to be a little more in depth on that, I'm sure. Going to have the full story in for the Neepawa banner. But Don Schmall, everyone knows him as part of the Gillen Schmall agencies, but he was a very talented pitcher as well back in the day, as well for the Neepawa Farmers. Vince Eastman, maybe not as many people are familiar. He's more out in the Verdun area, but he did play for the Neepawa Farmers in the early 90s as well as a pitcher. He, along with Don, are being inducted as individuals, and of course a huge honor for the Neepawa Farmers baseball team in general. The 1993 to 1997 team, which you could consider a dynasty. They won the league a couple times. They won provincials in 97. The entire team is being honored this weekend, being put into the Hall of Fame, which Neepawa has such a great history of baseball. It's great to see them getting that recognition.
Well, that's good. That's really good. Now, back to columns, right? You have to have news, you have to have opinions, and you have to have advertising.
Well, we have lots of opinions here, that's
We
for
do,
sure.
Yes. And apparently I even get interrupted, so my opinion doesn't count as much, apparently. Well, that's fine. What was your column about this week?
So
Kate?
this week I wrote a column about some changes that we are likely to see in the vehicle for hire business, which is also known as taxi cabs. In March, the federal government introduced a bill which would basically open the door for alternative providers, I'm going to call them, so services like Uber and Lyft. This legislation would lay the groundwork to making these services legal in the province. Among other things, the bill would dissolve the Winnipeg Taxi Cab Board, and it would also make municipalities responsible for deciding what they will and won't allow within their borders for a vehicle for hires. In case people aren't familiar with how Uber and Lyft work, it's basically an app on your phone. You put your credit card information in, and then you hit a button and you order yourself a car. And the idea behind them is that the drivers would be a mix of, people driving full time and also average people like you and me who maybe have a car and some spare time and want to make a little extra cash. The interesting thing is that as these services have grown, there have been a few issues, I guess I'm going to call it. One of them being that after the new shine of the service wears off, a lot of the drivers tend to be the same people who drove cabs, except that now they have to buy and maintain their own vehicle. It's a fairly secretive company, in particular Uber, and there have been charges of some, I'm going to say, unfair treatment of drivers. they've interestingly made a lot of use of behavioral psychology to try and get their drivers to keep driving at a minimum cost. So maybe if you're looking to keep us working more and more at a minimal cost, you should maybe read up about this.
I thought your wages were low enough now.
I don't think there's such a thing as Uber writers.
No.
Not yet.
Not yet. Push a button and Owen writes me a story. I think that in areas like our rural areas where a full-time taxi service has not proven to be viable. I know in our community we've had 2 or 3 over the last decade.
None have been successful.
No, none of them have really been able to make a go of it. This is a great way to easily connect someone who maybe wants to fill in some time making a little extra money with people who need a ride. But there is the issue of regulation and insurance, and while vehicles that drive for Uber have to undergo a safety inspection, their drivers have to have a criminal record check, the vehicles cannot have taxi cab paint. So they're basically designed to float under the radar a little bit. And the company has been fairly aggressive in opposing regulation, I guess is maybe the best way to say it. In communities where the service is not legal, it's actually sort of interesting. I think I maybe had to cut part of this out of the column, but they're very proactive about trying to weed out people, municipal officials or police officers who might be trying to sting the service. They've actually developed a way to provide basically a fake version of the app to these people that they've flagged. So you'll look on your phone and there'll be all these cars and they just don't exist.
Perhaps you can elaborate a bit, Kate. Why would they need to sting the service?
Well, because in a lot of, obviously this service is illegal in some areas because it doesn't come, they don't have taxi cab licenses, they don't have medallions, they don't have all these other things that are part of the established taxi cab industry. There's some issues with insurance as well. I mean, this is a commercial vehicle for hire service, no ways about it, and the driver should be carrying full commercial insurance. There's certain regulations that are in place in various communities for vehicles for hire, and in a lot of cases, the company's vehicles don't meet those requirements.
So if someone wants to get a ride through Uber,
Yeah.
do you go online or do you phone a 1-800 number? Or
It's an app on your phone.
okay, so how do you pay for this, with your credit card?
Yeah, you put your credit card number in. So in a lot of ways, it does provide advantages to drivers who, I would suspect that for a lot of taxi cab drivers, fare skipping is one of the major concerns, and you're guaranteed payment because, your fare has put their credit card information at the start. Yeah.
Prepaid.
Yeah.
And so the driver gets paid by Uber at the end of a 2-week period or the end of the month?
I don't know. I don't know how often they get paid, but Uber takes a percentage. I believe it's 20% of commission.
Actually, I could probably chime in on that. That's one of the things that a lot of drivers, in articles I've read as well about it, is they can take it at the end of their shift. Mm-hmm. They can take it during their shift. Mm-hmm. That's the sort of access that a lot of drivers really like comparatively to a standard taxi cab where you have to wait a week or 2 weeks. Yeah. Yes.
Oh, wow. Things I didn't know. Mm-hmm. Well, this week I wrote about something that's a lot more dull than that, about recycling. But the recycling in
Is it a recycled column or is it fresh?
Well, it might be. I don't know. It certainly has been around for a long time. Recycling in Manitoba is basically, I say this week in my column, a farce. It was well-intentioned, set up, in the early 90s there was a recycling program set up when our own Glenn Cummings of Neepawa here was Minister of Environment, and it was a great initiative at the time. But succeeding governments really didn't let it grow, and I'm sure that wasn't Glenn's intention when it started out, but nor was it the government's intention of the day. But 2 cents a container is taken off when you buy pop, when you buy milk, you buy whatever, and that goes to MMSM, Multi-Material Stewardship Manitoba, and that's supposed to fund recycling. The problem is that recycling depends on basically homeowners, usually housewives, but homeowners,
Consumers.
taking the taking the recycling, cleaning it up, putting it in a box, putting it at the curbside, gets dumped in a truck, away it goes to the landfill, whichever community you're in. And then it's sorted, and but if it's been contaminated on the way, it goes to the landfill. And it's very, very easily for it to get contaminated. And the problem is that the person who picks up the recycling doesn't get any money for it. It's all out of the goodness of their heart. Or at least in Ontario and Saskatchewan, they drink cans and drink bottles is a 10 cents levy on there, but it goes to the person who picks it up and takes it to the recycling center. And it's quite a thriving thing in Saskatchewan.
It's the same in British Columbia.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay. And it's the same as it used to be when many decades ago, when I was a child, 1950s and 60s. Maybe it was only 2 or 3 cents or 5 cents a bottle back in the day, but you bought a drink, you paid for it, you took it back, you got your 5 cents back. And it was quite a little enterprise. You could gather bottles at the fair or in the ditches or from your neighbors or whatever and make a little cash. Until they return a cash incentive to all levels of the recycling business in Manitoba, it's going to remain a farce, in my view. And I know it's being reviewed right now, but I'm not sure that they're getting enough government. The government, I'm not sure, is getting enough public input into this or private enterprise input to make it work.
Where's the real big problem coming in? Is it participation? Because again, when I'm driving around, I see blue bins all over the place. Or is it, as you said, the contamination? Where
Well,
sort of in the process is it all falling apart?
It's largely on the contamination and the fact that a lot of cans aren't making it into the blue containers. They're just going into the garbage. Of course, they don't go to recycling. And if there's any contamination at all, food garbage or disposable diapers or anything at all that gets thrown into the recycling cans or containers or contaminates it along the way, it goes to the landfill. And they may do some sorting, but as you can understand, after stuff has been all squished and compacted together in a truck, not too many people are willing to sort through it and take the risk of mucking through stuff to save the recycling. It's a lot easier to say, nah, that load goes to the landfill. And the money that is collected only goes back to the municipality, so there's no connect between the person who's doing the work and the people who are getting paid. But anyway, Kate, my notes say here a walk through the past. What's that all about?
Okay. Didn't you read the paper? Didn't you read the paper, Ken? You'd know about it if you had.
I'm just playing dumb. I'm playing dumb here, and that's not hard. I thought you were going to tell my life story.
Oh, okay.
Walk through the past.
So Ken, take us on a walk through the past.
No, you take us on the walk through the
Okay.
past.
So a walk through the past is not Ken's background or life story, so this may interest more people in attending. It's actually an event that's being planned at Arts Forward by the Archives with a bit of a partnership with the Beautiful Plains Museum and the Nipawh Guiding Unit. For the month of June, the show that is going to be in the gallery at Arts Forward is a collection of historic Nipawh photographs, which is kind of cool. And this event, which will include a fashion show of historic fashions coming from the museum and Helen Drysdale's personal collection, and there will also be a bit of dessert, tea, and coffee. So this event, which is planned for June 10th, is going to be kind of a grand opening of the show. And you can read all about more detail in the paper, but actually what I wanted to touch on about this was something that Helen told me when I was talking to her about the project. And why she's holding this event is really she wants to increase awareness about the archives and the service that they offer. And one of the major services is the preservation of historical photographs. And she said that they're increasingly finding that a lot of people are throwing out their old photographs. They maybe don't know the people who's in them or what they're about, and so people are just throwing these out. And she wants to get the word out that anyone with local historic photos of the area, it could be Glenella or Franklin or Brookdale, anywhere in the area, the archives or the museum would really like to have these as part of their collection, especially photographs of kind of everyday activities. She said they have very few photographs of women or children at work or play on the farm. While they may have a posed portrait, they don't have a lot of pictures of just everyday farm life, which is sort of an important part of our regional history. So if anyone has photographs that they're not really interested in, they should take them down to the archives. If they want to have them back, the archives will scan them and return them to you. And then at least you've got a backup. It's part of the regional, preservation of history, and you can still keep your photos if you so choose.
Cool. Springtime is seeding time. Airport Farm Project. That's a phrase that everybody hears, but what's it all about? How does it work?
So it's a section of, you may have to jump in here too.
No, that's okay. Go ahead.
It's a section of, and you can jump in if you want to. It's a section of farmland around the airport, and historically it has been farmed with volunteer labor and some donated materials, and the proceeds of that, the sale of that crop are split between the Curling Club and the Yellowhead Centre, correct?
Yeah, and there has been a bit of a change in the last 2 or 3 years, because while it was done by volunteers and everybody was very grateful for that, Enns Brothers, the John Deere dealership, has taken it on as kind of a demonstration farm, and they use their equipment on it and coordinate it and set up the seeding and the care of the crop and the harvesting. And what they tell me is happening there is that it's a good time for their staff and customers to learn how to run the newest equipment. So they only put their newest and best equipment out there.
Yeah,
It's a demonstration farm really now.
Yeah, I was going to say that too. I know that they've mentioned that for their staff, some of their staff don't actually, maybe don't have a farm or a large enough farm or the right kind of farm to be able to test some of, their new equipment. And so this has been a really good to get all of their staff out there and actually using the equipment for how it should be.
Yeah, I've been on a ride along with that, and it's pretty cool. You sit in the tractor there and do whatever you want to do, because it GPS, it turns at the end of the field, goes back, turns, comes back, and you're basically along for the ride, or in case of some kind of an emergency. Every month, Kate, the Neepawa Banner has a feature, the automotive section there, and you want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so this week we have our auto feature, the review. Every month in the section we have a review of a new car. We try and mix it up between local dealerships, cars that are available within this region. We have a local journalist who does the reviews. He actually takes a car out and drives it around and gives you his opinion of it. And I just wanted to make sure that people out there know about this, and if you have a vehicle-related business, this might be a really great way to get the word out. We run it in both our Neepawa and our Rivers paper, so you can reach about 10,000 copies if you choose to advertise in both. And it's just kind of a neat feature that is locally focused and a little bit specialized for a number of specialized vehicle businesses that I know we have out there.
Lots of things happening in Neepawa and Neepawa area, and we'll be back next week with another story behind the stories. And we love your feedback. We had good feedback on our first show last week, and we're going to try and make sure that it's going to be going forward. It'll be in a regular slot, probably 3 times a week on NACTV. You're also able to see it on the Neepawa Banner Facebook page, correct?
Yep.
And also on we'll soon hope to have it on video on demand on the NACTV website. We're working together with NACTV to bring more shows and more programming to the people of this area. If you have ideas for programming, and especially if you have people that can do the actual video work, we'd be more than happy to receive videos from events around the area, and we'll work them into it. If they're not long enough for a program, we'll put them together to make a program. This is Ken Waddell with Kate Jackman Atkinson and Owen Devereaux from the Neepawa Banner, Neepawa Press, and NACTV. Thank you for being with us.
I'm just going to jump in. Oh, wait, I got cut off. I'm just going to jump in here, too. If you can't wait until next week to hear from us, be sure to pick up one of our papers, Neepawa Banner, Neepawa Press, or Rivers Banner, or you can also read the stories online at mywestman.ca.
Thank you, Kate.